In this lesson, I'm going to add in the backend check and retrieval of the content sent through the form. So let's set up some variables here at the top. So first one that I want to set up is result, and I want to declare the value for result. And by the way, if you're not familiar with PHP, all our variables start with the $, and then the variable name. So I'm going to just set up a blank value for result. And we're also going to set up the next one is going to be a conditional statement. And this conditional statement is essentially going to check to see if we have a post value for submit. So we're going to check post value, and the format is going to be the same as we see within the sessions where we post in the value of submit. So we're checking essentially to see if submit has been clicked. And maybe we can even echo something out here in the meantime. So submit clicked. And we'll do this right at the top there. I know that this is going to be sitting outside of that HTML, but this was just to demonstrate how easy it is to pick up that information from our PHP backend. And we can also see that there is going to be a value there as well. So let's add those together within this type of format and try this out and see how this works. So now whenever we submit the form, we see submit clicked, send, and send is the value here. That's contained for post. So everything is working nice. So let's go back into here, and we don't actually need this this value here anymore. So this was just to make sure that we are able to pick that value up. And let's start by creating. So let's start by picking up the variables. So I'm going to set a variable for name, and I'm going to give it a value the same way that we picked up the submit value. I'm going to pick up that submit name there and assign a variable to it. And the reason that I'm doing it this way, it's a little bit longer, but this is just so that we can actually determine that everything is working the way that we want it to work, so that we've got all of these variables set. So this is a little bit longer, but in the end it's a little bit easier to understand as well. So email, so post email, and what do you think the next one is going to be? So the next item in our form was message, so we're going to need to pick up the post message, just make a few updates here. So message, and we got to make sure that the spelling is the same. So if you've used uppercase within that form, field names, then we got to make sure that we're matching. And then over here, so we've got this one, security check, and that would be the last one. So let's just give this a name of check, and $ for post, and let's copy and paste that in there. So there we've got all of those variables now picked up and added in. And now let's set some additional values here to create. So we're going to do some additional checks on these values to make sure that they actually exist. And if they don't exist, then we're going to update some error values. So we're also going to set another variable here, and I'll just call it error. And then within here we can have contents relating to any error messages that might come up. So let's do our checks now. So if, and we can either use the name value, or we could do something like post name, and we're just going to see, we're going to put that exclamation mark in front of it. So if there's no value for post name, then our error message is going to pick up a value and add to its current value. So that's where we do the dot and the equal sign. So it will add to the error message essentially. So please, and this is where we would add in our error message that we want to return back to the user, enter your name. And let's add in a line break here, so add in our HTML as well. So if there's nothing for post name, we're going to update error, and we're going to add in, please add in your name. And now let's do that for all the other fields that we're picking up. So if there's no value for email, then let's do that as well. So I know that it looks like we're kind of double doing this because we're going to do a check here on JavaScript as well. So this is entirely up to you. So I am going to do kind of a double check here. Actually, it's triple check because with HTML5, we got to make sure that if there's content here, this is going to be email. We can also add in that required so that all of these required fields need to be filled out, and that's an HTML5 check. Then we'll add in a jQuery check, and then finally we're going to add in our PHP check. So quite a lot of checks here, and again, depending on what your format is and how you want to use it, you can check to ensure that that everything is set up properly. So with PHP, so with emails, we do have a way to check to see if it's actually an email. So let's filter that variable. So this is gonna, this first one here checks to see if it's empty, and if it's not empty, then we're gonna do a filter on the value of it here, and if it doesn't come back as an email address, then we have a problem there as well. So we know that we wanna turn down that submission into the database. And it is really important that we do properly make sure that the data coming in is actually proper valid email data, so that we don't have any issues later on. So this is filter valid date email. That's just a filter that we can add on. So please enter your email address. And I'm going to just actually, at this point, let's output some content here. So another conditional statement, and this is the one we're actually going to send that email address. So we're going to check to see if the value of error is still nothing, and if it is, then we're going to fire off that email. So I'm going to just add in, I can just add in some commenting here, send email, and we're going to use the else statement there. So condition. So if it's not true, we're going to output a value, and we're going to just create a value for result. So we'll do something like result and div class, and we're going to use a bootstrap class alert, and we'll do a danger alert so that stands out nice and red for the users to be able to consume that. So danger alert, so that's the class, and then here we've got error found. And then of course you can customize these messages to whatever makes more sense for you. So here we're just going to list out all of that error information. So this is whatever the contents of this variable are, we're going to list that out over here. And then all we need to do, close off that div, and we need to add that into our HTML so that we do get an output. So the same way that we added in those session values, let's go down to the bottom here, and we want to add in another, maybe a form group. We can offset it by 2 as well. And then here is where we're going to output our PHP. Same way as before, so PHP and echo. And as I said, there is a short way of doing this. So on some servers it doesn't always work, so I'm hesitant to use it within a tutorial, but you could do the same result where you could do something like this, and then result, and then close that off, and this will output, this will do the same thing as that statement above it. So that's just a shorter way of doing it and outputting content within your HTML to make it still look nice and presentable. So let's try this out now and see how this works out. So when I refresh it and I submit it, so we get this PHP message here, error found, please enter a name, please enter an email address. So now whenever we enter test, we see that we've got that field gets filled out. And we can take this one step further as well, where if we've got a value for name, we can try to enter that in here within our value here. So even when the user refreshes, so we could do something like value, and then within here we can enter in our PHP and echo that out, because the echo is just placing it within our HTML construct. So echo, and we could just echo out the value of name. So if there's no value for name, then we might run into some errors. So we need to create a value for name. And echo value of name. Or it's actually probably better to use that. No, we're just going to use the value of name there. So let's refresh this again. So now we see that we're containing that value for name. If we just come out it without setting any value, try to submit it. So please enter a value for name, and now whenever we send it, we get our error message, but we still get the contents of the form field. So let's add that in as well for the email and so on. So I know it's going to defeat the purpose of the placeholder there, but so let's take care of that. And within the message, so let's add in a message here. And then the other one there we don't have to worry about. So this is just so that the user doesn't lose his place and still has that content being passed over. And let's set up these variables here at the top so that we do have some context that the server can use when it's rendering out these variables. It can say, okay, well, email is nothing, message is nothing, and make sure that you do place these default values here above your post check here. Otherwise, you're going to refill them with nothing afterwards. So make sure that the order is important. So next lesson, going to continue to build this out and add some more dynamic, cool functionality into our web form. So that's coming up in the next lesson.